let's see if I can, excuse me, manage to share my screen without screwing anything up. Yep, that's the one I want. Okay, can everybody see my slideshow? Awesome, brilliant. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you guys today about newsletters. I have about 10 different newsletter topics that I can kind of do a quick 40 minutes off the cuff. And we decided to go with basically the answer to the question, what do I put in my emails? I'm going to say that is probably the number one question that I get asked, maybe after which mailing list service should I use. And I used to kind of poo-poo the question and tell people, you know what to, like, you know how to tell a story, you know how to talk to people, you're an author, you're a writer, you can write an email, but it turns out that you can't and you don't know what to talk about. So I'm going to tell you, I finally gave up on just assuming everyone could do the same stuff I could do. First step on the path to understanding being neurodivergent. And I'm just going to tell you what I think that you should put in your emails. How's that sound? So, oh, good. I wasn't sure if it would actually advance. First of all, engaging your subscribers is very simple, but simple does not equal easy, right? We're all different. We all have different strengths. I think everybody who's here probably agrees with that statement very strongly. It's okay if you're not good at this right off the cuff. If this does not come naturally to you, that is all right. It turns out that it does come naturally to me, so you're good to go. I will help you here. The first thing that you need to understand, we're going to talk about a couple of mindset things. Sorry, but not too many. Then I'll get into the nitty gritty, I promise. The first thing you need to understand is that you are more interesting than you think you are. And I've asterisked this. Can I verb that? I did. I've put an asterisk on this because I don't know your life, but you are probably more interesting than you think. I think the chances are very good. If nothing else, you wrote an entire book, an entire story that your subscribers liked so much that they want to know more about you. So they hunted up the reader magnet or they found your website or whatever it is that got them onto your list. Obviously, they do think you're interesting. If the time should come that they no longer think that you're interesting, the good news is they can just leave. This is a newsletter, not a hostage situation. There's an unsubscribe button at the bottom of every email that you send. That's by law. So whatever service you're using is going to automatically insert that. And they can just click it and be gone. If somebody is on your list, they have explicitly said that they want to hear from you. So you are at least interesting enough for that. Second mindset hack is you are not bothering people. Again, I'm going to asterisk it. Maybe you are bothering people. Maybe you email every single day. I would unsubscribe. Maybe. I guess it would depend on the author. And that kind of right there is the key, actually, right? There might be people who would be willing to hear from you every day, but probably not all of them. And I do acknowledge that. So you are probably not bothering people. As long as your list is continuing to grow and you're not getting a whole bunch of emails that say, stop sending me so many emails, or a bunch of spam reports, or any other indication that people feel put out by the fact that you are communicating with them, you are not bothering people. There's an unsubscribe link at the bottom of every email. So again, anybody who is on your list at any given moment has explicitly said that they want to hear from you. So once we've got those two things out of our heads, which I know is easier said than done, but we're going to get them out of our heads. Once we have those two things out of our heads, you are more interesting than you think and you are not bothering people. Then we can move on and say, okay, why am I emailing these people instead of trying to contact them in some other way? And the reason is that email is the best way to get in touch with them. When asked, and this is just one example of one study, this one happening to be from Blue Core Web, but I could pull 5 or 6 or 7 more if I had some time with my files. People prefer to hear from brands and other, we're going to think of you as a brand, brands and companies that they like. They prefer to hear from you via email than any other way. I think that there's a few different reasons for that. I'm not inside their head, of course, but just coming from inside my own head, a terrifying place, I assure you. I would say that I can save it and come back to it later, which is very nice because obviously in the ephemeral sort of atmosphere of social media, I might see something and then I'm going to forget it as soon as it's out of my sight because it is then, as they say, out of my mind. So with an email, it's not ephemeral. I can save it. I can come back to it. I can read it at my leisure. I can take my time with it. There's not a bunch of other notifications competing for my attention right there at that exact moment. I, like many other people, I don't have a pie graph for this one, but I, like the majority of people, check my email before I check social media in the morning. And that is where I make sure that I have signed up for the people that I truly want to hear from. Because, of course, there is also the sort of I was going to say whimsical, but that's not the word that I want. There is the nature of social media whereby just because you're following someone, you don't necessarily see them, right? You don't necessarily see all of their content unless they're paying to put it in front of you, et cetera, et cetera. I think we can all agree you wouldn't be here if you didn't think, yes, I need a newsletter and I need to be able to talk to people. There is also, of course, the mercenary fact that if you lose your Facebook account, which is a thing that can happen via being hacked or being banned or who even knows, or any of your other social media accounts. I don't mean to just always talk about Facebook. It's awful nice to know that you've got that list of email addresses to fall back on and that you can still reach your people and tell them where else they can find you if you have left social media or had an account mishap or something. You want to have the ability to reach out to people via email. So I won't belabor that because you're here, so you must think you need a newsletter. So with all of that clear, let's talk about content. What do you put in the dang emails? Fine. You did what Tammy said. You got a newsletter provider, an email marketing service, sorry. You are collecting names from people who land on your website. Maybe you wrote a reader magnet. You totally should. Now what? Now you got to talk to these people all the time, right? Yes, you do. So, content hack number 1. I think there are 8 of these. I can't remember. What a surprise. The foundation of your emails is you. Okay, so whether you're talking about introducing yourself in a welcome sequence or sending just your regular campaigns to people that mention your life and so forth, you need to help readers get to know you. The one thing you have that nobody else who writes books in your genre or even your sub genre, the one thing you've got is that you're you and they're not. So when you are able to make yourself, the brand, stand out and be memorable to people, give them a hook to hang their hats on, so to speak, then you become somebody that they will remember. Oh, that's the one with the dogs, or that's the one that's crazy about, X weird niche interest, or that's the one that really loves supernatural, or whatever the deal is about you that you really, want to hammer on in your getting to know you emails. That gives people a way to remember you and a way to sort of relate to you. You need to help readers get to know you. Now, that does not mean that you have to tell readers super personal stuff about you. It does not mean that you have to reveal anything that you're not comfortable with. It doesn't mean that you have to be phony or make up a persona. It means sharing with them the things that you think there's a possibility they might relate to or like, to the degree to which you are comfortable. So if you are a super private person, you can still do this. You can tell people, I live in this city and here are some photos of things I see around my city. Or you can just say, I live in a big city. Or you can say, I live in the suburbs. Or you can say, I live in the Midwest. Or you can say, I live in the US or wherever you live. You see, there's specificity and there's not so specificity is not a thing you can say. There's specific and there's not so specific. And you get to choose what you want to do. You get to choose the level of personal, the amount of you that you want to put into any given email or whatever. I have students and clients who have never sent a picture of themselves or who never include pictures of their family, say. I have at least one client who sent baby pictures from her birthing bed, like gooey baby and all. So there's a range here, there's a spectrum, and you get to choose that. But somewhere, somehow, you do need to let them in a little bit and let them know a little something about you. Somebody who is excellent at this is, I always call her out, sorry, is Lucy Score. Lucy Score is amazing at this because Lucy is able to talk about her family and her life and the things that she enjoys in a way that is extremely relatable. But if you really, really look at it, it is also pretty surface most of the time. And I think that that's her level of comfort, and she's fabulous at it. But again, I don't know, send baby pictures from the hospital if that's what you want to do. Totally up to you. This comes down to if you're trying to stay a little bit more aloof and not send baby pictures from your hospital bed. This comes down to what I call, because I'm bad at naming things, the 3 W's and an H. Those are, who are you? What do you write? Why do you write it? And how do you write it differently than anyone else? These things will make you, on top of being recognizable and rememberable, memorable is the word I want there, will make you recommendable. And being recommendable is an excellent thing to do, because the number 2 reason that somebody picks up a book, the number 1 reason is because they've read a book by that author before and they liked it. The number 2 reason is that the book was recommended to them by somebody whose opinions they trust. So if you make yourself recommendable, that is going to help you to expand your reader reach, if you will. So, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit that. So, who are you? What do you write? Why do you write it? And how do you write it differently than everybody else? That last point for me is really the one where you're going to literally set yourself apart from the other people whose books they might be reading. And I don't mean in a negative way. You'll notice I don't say how you write it better than everybody else, although maybe you do. But it's a way for you to make them understand that there's some kind of special sauce that they're only going to get from you, that you're scratching some kind of specific itch, which is a gross way to say it, but whatever. So if you, an example that I use a lot is if you write steamy romance, but it's for like older people, right? Like not elderly people, although do that too if you want to, but you know, like 50 Shades of Grey for the hot flashes set, right? If you can tell somebody that that's what you do, and then they can turn around and say it to their friend who can immediately in their head make the connection, 50 Shades of Grey for the hot flashes set, that's, I loved 50 Shades of Grey. I am the hot flashes set. Now you've just got somebody kind of in your web, so to speak. So yeah, who are you? What do you write? Why do you write it? How do you write it differently than everybody else? And there is actually a link at the very end of this whole presentation where you can get a little workbook to help you kind of work your way through that. Content hack number 2, don't forget to greet your squad. I want you to make people feel like they are part of your sort of friend group, if you will, not again in an insincere or phony way, but simply in that, oh, here we are a bunch of people, or even just the 2 of us that like the same things and enjoy X, Y, and Z. You can do some of this by what you would call personalization. So there's like a placeholder, a little bit of placeholder code that you can put in a subject line or in an email proper that will use somebody's first name if you collect that kind of thing. You can do it in the greeting, even if it's not by name. For example, when I email my list, a lot of times my emails begin with, hey, ninja, because my crowd is ninjas. That's my branding, is my little ninja guy. So I call them ninjas. Hey, ninja. Above all else, just try to talk to them like you're talking to a friend. Imagine yourself sitting down across, the table at a coffee shop or a bar or wherever it is that you would hang out with your friends and just having a chit chat about what you've been up to, books, movies, your life, what's coming up, what you think about, whatever current events, whatever it is that you email your people about. Just imagine that you're chit chatting with them. Content hack number 3, story is the backbone of your emails. Sometimes it's okay if you're just telling them a story. And I don't mean obviously a long, involved story, but sometimes it's okay if you just say to them, hey, I'm just emailing, to say, hey, what's up, and let you know what's been going on with me. Here's a funny thing I saw. I'll talk to you next week, next month, whenever it is that you email. It's okay if every one of your emails isn't reminding them, buy my book, I have a thing. In fact, personally, I think that most readers prefer it. But sometimes your story does lead into some kind of call to action. That is, here's something I was working on. Here's a little snippet of the book that I'm writing. And oh, by the way, here's the pre-order link, right? Or I was at the bookstore today and I picked up this book. Here's a link to it on Amazon. You guys should check it out and hit reply if you've read it and let me know what you thought about it, or whatever it is that you're going to ask them to do. But it is okay to mix those things up. One thing that I get from authors a lot is that they don't want to feel like they're selling all the time. Good news, you don't have to sell all the time. Sometimes you can just email and just talk to people. If you are on my list, you have or will get at some point, because I have some sequences running, a whole series of emails specifically about storytelling in email. And I'll introduce you to my good friend Bill, who is amazing at that. And so you can definitely get some more of this if you want to sort of move into the Ninja ecosystem. Storytelling in emails is really important, and weirdly one of the things that I find my authors struggle the most with, which I did not expect, but here we are. Content hack number 4, make a point to relate to your people. Okay, so we can assume that your subscribers are somewhat like you, even if the only thing you have in common is you both like the genre you write in. Well, there you go. There's some common ground. If you write high fantasy, you probably both like Tolkien or Bradley, or I'm just naming older people. Who's cool now? Sando. Everybody loves Brando Sando, right? Like, so if you write epic fantasy, you've got authors that you enjoy in common. Maybe if you have authors you enjoy, you also have maybe TV shows or movies that you've enjoyed. So now you've got a couple of other things to talk about. You can branch out from there, and you can sort of assume there will be some shared interest in other topics or media that sort of, you know, are right next to, that are adjacent to the things that you know they like, because that's why they're on your list. But you can also range a little bit further afield, and it's even okay if they don't necessarily like the thing that you do. People who join my list know that there's a lot of talk about Doctor Who and Taylor Swift. And if you don't like those two things, that's fine, because it's certainly not every email, and I'm not going to belabor it. But for the people who do, it gives them a little ping of joy, and then they're like, oh my God. And if it's not that, then it'll be the Funko Pops or the 1990s Super Nintendo RPGs or whatever. I've got a lot of interests, and I can usually find at least one thing I have in common with somebody. If nothing else, send some pet photos. If you've got a pet and you send a picture to your list that has a picture of your pet, you are going to get some pet pictures back, because that's just how people operate. You don't even have to ask for it. People love dogs. People love cats slightly less, I guess. I don't know why, because I love them both the most. Maybe you have a rabbit. Maybe you have a lizard. I don't know. Send some pet pictures. And if you don't have any pets, well, you should probably get some, because pets are awesome. Sorry, I went 2. Content hack number 5. I want you to share updates about the stuff that you're working on and the stuff that you're doing. If you're going to be like at a conference or whatever, you want to let people know that. But also your actual work in progress, I think people have a tendency to not talk about very much. I know people who will occasionally say, I'm still working on whatever book is coming out or whatnot. Like, I'm still working on whatever book is coming out is not like the most compelling thing anybody ever said about a book, man. Build the hype. You don't want to go out there and be dropping books like you're Beyonce, because you're not Beyonce. Unless you are Beyonce, in which case, DM me. But you're probably not. So rather than just show up with a fresh new book that they don't know much about and they haven't heard from, build the hype as you're going, whether it takes you 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years to write a book. Tell them if you wrote a really funny little snippet of conversation and include that. Tell them if the next book after this is going to be about the hero that they've all been asking, when does he get his story? Romance writers, you know what I'm talking about. Tell them about the ways in which you're planning to expand the world that you write in. If you're doing, you know, world building stuff like fantasy, sci-fi, UF, whatever, how you're going to teach them more, how you're going to introduce them to more of this world that you've built and how cool it's going to be. Talk to them about the way that you built your magic system and how they're going to see something so cool in this book when it's out on whatever date. And I mean, if you mention the book's name, a hyperlink to Amazon where they can order it is not out of line. Totally fine. But basically, I want you to be sending things that get them excited, so that when the book actually arrives, all you've got to do is then you can drop it like you're Beyonce, but they were ready. And so I guess that's more actually dropping it like Taylor Swift. Just tease the crap out of it for a really long time and get everybody super excited. Content hack number 6 is when your book is ready, you got to stick the landing, though. So you've been talking about this book for ages, however long it takes you to write it, and readers are psyched. And I definitely do not want you to show up on release day and say, the book is here if you want to go get it. And then they don't hear about it again after that, because they need to be reminded. They need to be told all during launch week or whatever I always say launch week as though you're not, kind of launching the book forever. But let's say that first week is your really big, like, I want to push, I want to get it as high in rank as I can. I want to get as many, reviews as possible right out of the gate. During that initial period, go ahead and hype the crap out of it. If anybody is annoyed at you for emailing a little too much during your launch week, they definitely do not understand what's going on with your whole situation, why they're on your list, why you do what you do. Those people can just show themselves out. But for people who are on the list and get your first email, let's just say on a Monday that says the book is here, they may not go get that book. They may look at it and they may think to themselves, yeah, I got to grab that. And then how many people here can relate to the fact that they immediately forget it as soon as they stop thinking about it? That's me. So they're maybe going to need an email on Wednesday, and they maybe might need another email on Friday. They're going to need some reminders. Now, for me, if I'm doing something for Ninja, that's a little bit different than releasing fiction, because I'm often like launching a new course or something that's kind of time sensitive, and so I need to make sure that I give people a lot of reminders, and then I got to send them a last chance email, and it's a whole situation, right? But there are reliably about 50% of the people in my audience don't actually sign up for something until they get that last call email, and that is pretty standard across every genre and every type of marketing that you can do. And so just email them more than once. Please don't just say the book is here and then wander off hoping that everybody will A, see that email, B, open that email, and C, click on that link in that email and buy the book that day. So when you email them, though, let me just peek at my next slide because I can't remember. Yeah. See, I already said all that. I'm so brilliant. When you email them after that first launch day, though, I want you to not to email, and first of all, I don't want you to resend the launch email exactly as is, like an actual email resend, because that's annoying. And I don't want you to email them and say, did you get the book? Did you buy it? Did you buy it? Because that is annoying. I want you to send them something celebratory during your launch period, something that says like on Wednesday, hey, look at this cool review I got, or the book got to number, whatever, 720 in whatever your subcategory is. They don't know if that's good or bad. Readers don't understand how the ranks work. But you can email them something celebratory and excited and happy about the launch itself. Everything's going so well. People seem to really be loving the books. I'm getting emails back from you guys that say you're excited that so-and-so is finally getting to tell his story. And again, what's the word I'm looking for? Hype. Again, you're just hyping it, right? So that's what I mean by stick the landing. Don't just show up and be timid. Show up and absolutely nail it and get these people out there buying your actual books. Content hack number 7, book recommendations. And I actually don't know. Yeah, I didn't put it there. So this can mean 2 things, actually. So I said talking about a sincere recommendation for a book you loved, right? The example that I use a lot is a book that I read back in the mid-2000s in paperback, and I don't have really actual paper books in my house anymore. I'm pretty much ebook only here. I wanted to read that book again, and it wasn't available in ebook, and I actually found the author who had the rights back but hadn't published it in actually tracked down the author and sort of bullied her into letting me help her get that book and the other 3 that she had published in that genre listed on Amazon as ebooks, mostly so I could read it again. And one of the things that I did was recommend it to my romance list. And when I did, I recommended it with the subject line, "This is the book I waited 10 years to read." So when people open that up, that's the story they heard. I read this book. I love this book. I've thought of it so much over the years because this is what I do for a living. I went and bullied this author into letting me help her. And that's the story that they got to hear. That was, if I may say so myself, an excellent recommendation email. A ton of people picked up that book on my recommendation because it wasn't just a book swap at the bottom of your email that you're doing out of obligation because you signed up to a book funnel thing or whatever. It was a genuine, sincere recommendation of a book that I loved and that, frankly, I thought that they would love too. I also, though, like to ask readers to give me book recommendations, which is not outlined specifically on this slide. Maybe I need to edit it. But that also usually gets a really good response. If you say to somebody, that, my TBR pile is still, 50 books tall, but I'm in between books and I'm looking for something in X subgenre or something with X tropes or something with this kind of hero or something with this kind of world building. What do you guys got? You'll get a bunch of replies from people who are excited to tell you about a book that they loved. If you actually pick that book up, this is a great opportunity to reply to whoever recommended that book and tell them, I picked that book up. I'll let you know what I think of it. And then you're building these relationships a little bit one-on-one with people. You can only build so many one-on-one relationships at a time, but that's how you do it, is one at a time. So I really believe in the power of talking about books with your readers. And then again, not on this slide, but like I mentioned earlier, adjacent media. If you write, I don't know, if you wrote urban fantasy back in the whatever year that was that the 2000s? You would have been talking to your list about, say, Buffy, right? If you write grimdark fantasy, you were talking to people about Game of Thrones a few years ago, right? So like that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. You can talk about something that's adjacent, movies or video games or TV series or whatever that also fall into your genre. And then content hack number 8, it doesn't even count because it's everything, literally just everything. There's genuinely nothing you can't talk about in your newsletters, provided you're comfortable with it and you're okay with how it will shape your brand. I have had students and clients who talk to their newsletters about things that were tragic. I've had them talk to their newsletters about things that were overtly sexual. I mean, you probably don't do that if you're writing children's or whatnot, but some of my steamy clients, my clients who write steamy, have that kind of relationship with their list. I've had people share wedding photos, children's photos, vacation pictures, always with the pets. Obviously, there's genuinely just nothing you can't share with people as long as you're comfortable with it and you're willing to take responsibility for how it shapes your brand. If you're going to talk to them about politics or religion or anything controversial, you need to understand that means some people are going to be angry and leave. Some people are going to, not think that was cool for you to talk about, whatever. I myself do not court controversy much. But that also doesn't mean that I don't also sometimes, take a stand on things that are important to me. But basically, I mean, I'm really not kidding. There's nothing you can't talk about in your newsletters. So how do I keep track of this? The secret to keeping it organized. The idea of me teaching anybody anything about organization is hilarious, is idea banking. I use Trello for my project management software. That's a very lofty term for how I use it, but I use Trello, and I do have a board in Trello. You could use Asana, you could use Notion, you could just use Evernote, whatever, where I keep notes about stories I see here and there. I use it because I can do it on my phone, because I, again, have the attention span of a gnat. So if I think of something or I see something cool while I'm scrolling through my phone, I can just screen capture it and open the Trello app and just stick a picture in there or type a few words and whatever. But the key to that is to have some sort of system where you can catch thoughts as they go through your head and you think, oh, I could put that in my newsletter. Well, if you're anything like me, in 15 minutes, you will never remember that you thought about that, let alone that you thought to put it in your newsletter. So just make sure that you can capture those ideas and put them in some kind of little storage area so that when you sit down to do your newsletter and you're looking at that blank page, it's not quite that grim because the page may be blank, but you've got a whole treasure trove of ideas here. Then you can grab one and start typing about that. If you go to newsletterninja.net/NPC, there's a little workbook that helps you walk through the 3 W's and an H. There's a little cheat sheet about this. I think the slides are there. I think there's a copy of the slides there. And there's a follow-up email that comes afterwards that will show you a little video about how I story bank. It'll show you how my Trello board looks. If you're interested in that sort of thing, but if you don't want to have that, you can just sign up, get the workbook, and there's an unsubscribe link right there, obviously, because you can just leave. You don't have to stick around. Takes us back to the first thing I said, right? So I did it, 30 minutes. Sweet. Let me unshare this screen and see. Okay, can you guys see me? I guess it doesn't really matter. Questions. Time for questions. Who's got questions? I got answers. I'm gonna scroll through and see what there is. Make sure those are your babies, or that you have the parents' consent before doing it. Yes, do not send pictures of other people's babies because that's a really, really bad idea. The link, Kelly, is newsletterninja.net/NPC. Yes, you must not send pictures of other people's babies. Iris, imposter syndrome. I will tell you, imposters don't get imposter syndrome. That is a quote from the marvelous Becca Syme, who, if you are not involved in Becca's ecosystem, you definitely should be. She is the Write Better Faster person, and she's amazing. Let's see. Does a lot of this apply to newsletters for, say, editors as well? So, like, you're an editor, Laura, and you're emailing, like, clients and so forth? Yes. It's going to be a little bit different, actually, because you're more in the... That's more of a... What's the word I'm looking for? That's more of a what we would call B2B, business to business, right? Than a B2C, which is business to consumer. I hate both of those terms. I hate every marketing term, which is why it's weird that this is my job. But so you are, you're in a slightly different position. I would actually love it, Laura, if you would email me directly, Tammi@newsletterninja.net. I definitely have some resources I could point you to that were really helpful to me in getting in a position where, like, I could have a business that talked to authors, because I do find that most of the marketing information out there doesn't work for authors. Like, it doesn't, the way that I talk to my crew is so different from the way your average, like, funnel bro or boss babe talks to their people. It's a really different crowd. It's a really different attitude. And because we're kind of all in this creative sphere, things are just a little bit different. And I waded through a lot of nonsense and, like, scammery to find a few people that I think are super ethical and really helpful and not super expensive. So shoot me an email, Tammi@newsletterninja.net, and I'd be happy to hook you up with those resources. What is a book magnet, or was it reader magnet? I say reader magnet. Actually, what I say, Samantha, because I'm a child, is cookie. I call them cookies. I wrote a whole book on it, which is exciting. It's short, and believe me, I heard about it in reviews, called If You Give a Reader a Cookie. So if you search for that on Amazon, well, first of all, you'll get that children's book series. So that was a mistake, but I thought it was clever. But that's what it's called, If You Give a Reader a Cookie, and it's all about reader magnets. I think it's great, and I highly recommend it. I hate selling my own stuff. That's dumb, but it's like $5, so whatever. But basically, a reader magnet is something that you offer your readers in exchange for their email address. So you'll see people say not to do that. There are people who very much like to say, oh, I don't bribe anyone to get on my list, because then all you get is people who want free stuff. And while that's not 1,000,000% untrue, I buy books to the tune of thousands of dollars a year, and I also like free stuff. So you can definitely, especially if your reader magnet is really tightly aligned with what you're writing, which is something I talk about in that book. If your reader magnet is a real no-brainer, so that people who have read your books absolutely want to read that little extra material from you, and vice versa, if people who pick up that magnet without reading your books finish the magnet thinking, oh my God, I really want to read her series now, that's the very best kind of reader magnet. And so that's what I recommend. Some people use an entire book. I write really slow. So to me, an entire book is a little bit too precious to offer. And I have some opinions that are a little controversial about the general devaluing of our books anyway, so I don't like to give away a whole ass book. But anything that's short, I think, is fair game. Samantha mentions a scene from an alternate point of view or a bonus scene. Exactly right. A lot of romance writers I know are doing extended epilogues for basically every book they write. They just kind of build that into, like, the making of the series. If you're writing something like urban fantasy, science fiction, any of the, like, heavy kind of world building ones, a prequel is always nice. Something that shows how the villain went from being some normal guy into being a villain. People love a villain prequel. I always say Star Wars got 3 movies out of that, right? People like a side story, so something that happens to the characters kind of during the course of your series, but it doesn't actually really belong in the series proper, is great. I know, isn't she something? She's being very serious. This is Nagini, and she is a very good girl. But she really likes attention. So just anything's really short, really tightly aligned. And something like a scene from an alternate point of view or a bonus scene, those have the benefit for you of being super short. So they don't take a tremendously long time to write. And because they are so tightly interwoven with the content of the book itself, they are, what I said, a no-brainer. Like they just are a no-brainer for people to sign up. If they read the thing and they really loved it, then yeah, they want to read the meet cute from the hero's point of view instead of the heroine's point of view, or the bonus scene about, you know, whatever thing, or the extended epilogue about after the wedding or whatever. I'm always devolving into talking about romance as though that's the only genre. I do know that there's more. Let's see, what else? What should your very first newsletter contain? Amanda, your very first newsletter should contain a link to the thing that they signed up to get if you have a reader magnet, and a greeting that tells them who you are and that says you will talk to them again in a couple of days. Then give them some time to go off and read your little story or whatever. Email them a couple of days later and say, hope you got your cookie okay, and let me tell you about myself. And that's where you're going to launch into the who you are, what you write, why you write it, and how you write it different than anybody else. For real, I don't care if you sign up and immediately unsubscribe, but sign up at that link, newsletterninja.net/NPC, and grab that little workbook, and that will help you work through those topics right there. Anybody else? I don't know what our timeline looks like, but it's 1:38 or it's X38. I don't know where you are. Very particular type of creative. Yes. So Heather, if you are both an editor and a writer, you are probably writing to 2 different audiences, right? There's probably your newsletter that would go to any readers of your fiction. But if you're an editor, you've also got clients that you're sending to. I would extend to you the same offer I did to Laura. If you shoot me an email, Tammi@newsletterninja.net. God, I can give you some resources that will help you with that editor side of your business. How do I talk to authors? What do I email people about? How do I not sound like I'm pushing them to, you know, always use my services all the time? Ways that you can be helpful, that you can offer them some real value and so forth. I think it's a really delicate balancing act when you are nurturing a list of clients, which is how I think of my people, my clients and or students, as opposed to a list of readers. Readers are so much easier, right? If you're nurturing a list of clients, you have to both entertain and inform them, and then you're also trying to sell them stuff. And if you're too salesy, you turn them off. And if you talk too much about stuff that isn't your editing, you're not doing yourself any favors. So yeah, it's a different skill set for sure. Is there one newsletter services better for authors, or are they pretty much all the same? So there's kind of an axis. Is it axes? Yes, like an X and Y axis. So here's the 2 axes for newsletters, in my opinion. There's features and there's price, right? I don't know how that works. Some services are very, very feature rich, but also very, very expensive. Your active campaign, your drip, your ConvertKit is pretty expensive. Constant Contact, Get Response, those are like high-end, like hardcore marketing, email marketing services. Then on the cheap end, you've got some stuff like SendFox, Flowdesk, but those end up not being very robust, right? And then there's some stuff that's kind of clustered around the middle. For me, the recommendation I always make is MailerLite. We have an affiliate link for that. It's newsletterninja.net/MailerLite. Because MailerLite is the place where the feature set and the price are kind of at their best balance, in my opinion. That said, MailerLite had a colossal moment of stepping on their own junk last month, earlier this month. I don't even know. Time has no meaning. Managed to get themselves blacklisted with Spam House. If you're thinking about moving, maybe this week isn't the week to do it. Behind MailerLite, probably my recommendation is ConvertKit, but that's going to cost you a little bit more money. What you want to look for, the important thing is that you want to have the ability to send at least a welcome email and hopefully an entire series of welcome emails, 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 of them, depending on how many books you have and how much you have to say about yourself. So you definitely want to be able to do that. You need to be able to schedule regular campaigns, obviously, and you want to be able to divide your list based on things like so it would be either tags or groups or lists, or, it's called something different in every service, but you want to be able to identify as they join and then look after the fact and see where did someone come from, what was the source, what page did they sign up on, what are their various interests, what links have they clicked on, that kind of thing. So you're looking for that in a feature set at a price you can afford. And then the best thing to do is just to try them all. If you go to my website, if you go to, there's a link in the footer that says resources. I think it's just /resources. There's a whole bunch of links to various providers there, and you can sign up for trial accounts with all of them. Some of them have longer, more generous trials than others. And then I would get in and actually try using it, because some of them are clunkier than others. Some of them are very elegant and look really nice, and they're very easy to use. And some of it is really personal. I know a lot of people who are crazy about ConvertKit. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Even though I can objectively see that it's a very good service, it is impossible for me to use. It is not at all how my brain works. But there are a bunch of people out there for whom it is exactly how their brain works. So you maybe want to try a few out. That's probably the best bet. Is there a best layout, says Amanda. Do you mean for your newsletter? Yes, simple. The simpler, the better. I know people who have a whole complicated, I've got a header picture, and then there's a little menu, and then there's a sidebar that says what I'm reading and this, that, and the other. Simple, simple, simple. Think of it as though you were writing an email to a friend. You would just dash it off. It would be the next thing to plain text. It's not going to be plain text because you want to be able to have links and sometimes pictures, and you need to track those links and so forth. But when someone opens it, I used to be really into kind of a whole zine kind of layout, if you will, and it looked good, and it, there were a lot of pictures and almost like flipping through a little magazine or something. But as time has gone on and people, are more likely, let me try again. As time has gone on and people are more likely to be reading on mobile. So all that beautiful formatting you're doing isn't going to work anyway. And B, getting into inboxes gets harder and harder. You kind of want to keep it as stripped down as possible. I'm still totally keen if people want to have a banner at the top so that people see your branding right away and they identify this newsletter with you. You definitely want to have your branding colors. If your brand is, red and purple, what a couple of lovely colors those would be. That's your branding for your author name. Then yeah, definitely use those colors in your email. Use, the purple for the links or whatever. But you want to keep it as stripped down as possible, because every picture, every font change, every color, they all have the potential to give you just a tiny little ding in deliverability, and that is cumulative over the course of that email, right? So I tend to keep things very pared down so that I can sort of buy myself, for lack of a better term, the room to have an animated GIF or something, because I'm crazy about those. But basically, you want your layout to be as simple as you possibly can and still convey the things you want to convey. You've got to include links. You've got to include the cover of your book, for goodness sake. It's your #1 marketing tool. But you just want to keep it as slimmed down as possible. Anybody else? Looks like 1:45. So I think you have to go to your next thing, right? I can't see myself. Okay. I'm going to assume that you're all going to go to your next thing. If you need me, you know where to find me. I have a Facebook group. I just said my email a bunch of times, Tammi@newsletterninja.net. You can always email me. My inbox, pardon the language, is a shit show, but I do always try to answer. Again, we have a lovely Facebook group if you're a Facebook person. And yeah, come join the ecosystem. If nothing else, sign up at newsletterninja.net/NPC. And thank you, Jason, for recording. Bye, guys. Bye, Carrie.